The Gold Standard, written by Mike Krzyzewski, also known as Coach K. This book is about Coach K and his journey in building the 2008 men's basketball team for the Olympics and reaching for the gold medal. Little background about Coach K. He has over 1,000 wins as a coach, 101 wins in the NCAA tournament, a 5-time NCAA champion, a 3-time Coach of the Year, 13 ACC titles, 5 gold medals, and a 3-time Basketball Hall of Famer. The first thing that Coach talks about in leadership is choosing your people in team building. This is the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and the how. Coach K says that personnel needs to all be on the same page, and it also means that everyone needs to have a role in the team and understand how that role relates to the common goal. In each chapter, Coach K shares a story relating to his main points. In this chapter, my favorite story was when Coach K met with his right-hand man, Jerry C., and they talked about how they wanted to build the roster, what was important to them when building the roster, and how they were going to reach their goal. Time to understand context. This means that you have to understand multiple points of views. Coach K argues that understanding what you and the organization are trying to do and where you stand within that context is essential. Coach K says that the leader must ensure that the team and its members are all fully on board and that they understand the goal and that they build on the past rather than lingering it. For context, the USA team lost in 2004 to Argentina, and now they are back in the Olympics trying to get the gold, not the silver like they got last time. And that the context of global recognition is very important too. The United States is seen as the mecca of basketball in a lot of other countries recognize this, and it puts a bigger target on Team USA's back, and Coach K wanted his team to understand that so that they worked harder. Coach K also talked about gaining perspective. So he said that this is understanding that the goal is more important than you as the individual and that you have to overcome individual egos. He said that perspective is different than context. Perspective gives humility towards a goal, whereas context brings seriousness and focus. He said that perspective brings humbleness so that you don't lose the big picture, and that it is a privilege to be representing the nation and that you're not representing yourself as the player. My favorite story from this chapter was when Coach K invited some wounded warriors to talk to the team about their representation of the country. It might be different fighting a war versus playing a basketball game for your country, but he wanted to get the point across that they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. Coach K also said that forming relationships has to be the single most important factor in team building as a leader, and that you need to establish communication early on as relationships are based on communication. He said that a lack of communication leads to instinctive decisions, something they were trying to avoid since different players had different instincts. Coach K also argued that trust and respect were essential to forming relationships and that they were the basis of relationships, along with bonding and humor and letting loose, kind of getting to know each other more on a personal level, making everyone more comfortable. My favorite story from this chapter was when Coach K talked about Dwyane Wade in 2007, coming off of an injury and unable to participate in games, camps, practices, etc. He still showed up and showed his support to his team and helped out in any way he could, forming relationships with the players and coaches along the way. Coach K then talked about developing a support system and how important that is as a leader. Coach K said that as a leader, having a strong support system makes it easier to immerse yourself in the team and its goal. He said that support systems help establish perspective and roles, and that it allows you to share your moments, good or bad, with that support system. My favorite story from this chapter was when Coach K talked about bringing in his former coach Bob Knight for one of the USA practices. He said that Bob Knight didn't interfere with the practice or give much feedback at all, but simply having him there for support motivated Coach K more to the goal. Coach K also talked about standards and establishing standards. Coach K said that standards are better than rules because rules feel fake and standards are something that we do every day. He said that rules don't promote teamwork, but standards do, and that standards are shared amongst the group as it establishes accountability. He said that standards unite a team since the standards were come up by with the players, not the coaches. So those players, based on their standards, were united. My favorite story from this chapter was when Coach K talked about their first standards meeting. They didn't even actually have a whiteboard to write on. They had to use a Sharpie and a cardboard, and the players came up with all of their standards, like no excuses, no bad practices, holding each other accountable, things like that. And then he also talked about how when he went back to Duke after the Olympics, he did something similar with a standards meeting with his Duke team and talked about the success that yielded. Coach K also talked about cultivating leadership. He said that this means that you have multiple leaders. He couldn't be the only leader on the team. He needed to have some more members show leadership qualities. He said that everyone should have a voice and contribute in decision making. He said that they need to have a mindset of an our team versus a your or my team. And he said that leadership should develop and emerge and not just be assigned. And he gave 3 stories of leadership through LeBron, Kobe, and Jason Kidd as their leadership developed and emerged. Jason Kidd became more of a mentor in veteran leadership. Kobe became more of a motivator and an intense leader, trying to get everybody to be more intense. He was more of the engine for the team. And then LeBron was more of the personable leader, the more relaxed leader, the person that you could relate to on the team. Coach K then talked about learning the language in the context that they are in. They need to understand the field that they were playing in. He said that this involves getting on the same page with the team's lingo. So Coach K obviously is going to talk different than his NBA players, so we need to find common ground on that. He also talked about how they focus on the NBA versus college versus world terminology in basketball and how those games are played differently. Coach K said that an increase in communication yields greater action, and that's why you should learn the language of the environment that you are in. My favorite story from that chapter was a scrimmage in Las Vegas that they did where they simulated playing against one of the international teams, and they began to incorporate more of the world rules, dimensions of the courts, terminologies, and play styles so that they could be ready for the Olympics and its language. Coach K then talked about adapting as a team. He said that leaders need to be able to adapt. Not only do leaders need to be able to adapt, but everyone on the team must adapt as well, and that they all need to abandon their self-ego and adopt it for more of an ego for the group. He said that the coaches and players must adapt to each other as well. And my favorite story from this chapter was when Coach K talked about Nick Arison, who is a very prominent figure in the Miami Heat organization, doing more managerial dirty work like taking care of equipment, doing food runs, water, setup of equipment, things like that. The small little dirty work that you would see from a manager of a high school sports team. He talked about how he changed his role and let go of his ego for the greater good of the team. Coach K then talked about practice and its significance in team building. Coach K said that practice should be done more than play as it allows you to create habits and internal competition, which will allow your team to learn more about itself and use practice as a benchmark for reflection about the goods and the bads. This will allow for adjustments within the team and how it operates. My favorite story from here was when the staff and coaches of the USA team were essentially acting as a scout team, which mimics a team that they will be playing in the tournament. and how the USA team had to change their style of play based on the scout team that they were facing. That scout team really prepared them for the further international play that they would have to do. Coach K then talked about self-assessment, which is looking at your team critically and helping unlock its full potential. Coach K said that this needs to be done at a group level for the team and an individual level for himself as a coach. He said that assessing allows for adaptation, which allows for improvement. My favorite story from this chapter was when Coach K talked about changing the time of the media requirements. So the media has X amount of time to get coverage at each practice, but the team chooses when that occurs. So he talked about how they change it from the end of practice to the beginning of practice to ease player nerves. Coach K then talked about motivation, which is one of my personal favorite parts of leadership, is motivating your staff, your players, whoever it may be. Coach K said that motivation is one of the primary responsibilities of leaders, and that is especially important to motivate your stars who can also act as leaders on your team. Coach K argues that motivation is symbiotic, meaning that when he's motivated, his players are motivated, and vice versa, which will allow for greater results. And he says that there are various ways to motivate, and he went through various ways of motivation in his stories. My favorite being the Magic Johnson speech, who he was on the 1992 team who won the gold, and he came in to talk to the players about the journey that he went on to get the gold, further motivating the players. Coach K then talked about game time. This is putting everything that he talked about into play, into actual practicum. So he said that this is a platform, an improvement, and a test for your team. Coach K said that competition brings pressure and shows how you handle it as a leader and how your team handles it. And he also said this is the most important time for accountability, making sure that those standards are being upheld. My favorite story from this chapter was when Coach K talked about the game against Argentina. It was a very hard fought game, and Argentina had actually previously beaten the United States in the 2004 Olympics in the semi-final game. So it was really important that the USA got this win. Then coach wrapped it up talking about the golden moment, allowing your players to celebrate and celebrating the team's accomplishments. He said at the time of writing his book, the championship game against Spain was the highest ever scoring Olympic game, and that many of his players came back for 2012. And pictured here is Coach K with a bunch of medals around his neck, because the coaches actually do not get medals. So that kind of shows the togetherness, the support, the accountability that this team has right here. All those points that Coach K was talking about through the book, very much exemplified right here in this picture. The main takeaway I had from this book is that making a team simply does not work. You actually have to build a team to see success. You can't just plot one down. I also really grasp an understanding of accountability, sacrifice, and self-assessment, and its role in team building, especially with the United States team, with sacrifice, how there's all these star players put on one team, how everyone had to make sacrifices with their egos, styles of play, what they did with their personal time. Everything about their lives was changed and sacrificed for that gold medal. And this class has taught me that leadership is an ongoing process that must grow as a team grows. You as the leader can only grow so much as your team does. And it is a symbiotic relationship that all parties must sacrifice and contribute to. So in my future endeavors as a leader, I will definitely be using many of the points that Coach K brought across, such as holding standards, communication, and forming relationships were my big three that I took away from here. And here are my references, just the book about that I read. Thank you.